Alrighty, should we kick this off now? Hey everyone, welcome to the Curbivore Coffee Break. This is our inaugural session inside the lightning fast delivery revolution. I'm Matt Newberg, the founder of Hungry. Hungry is a new media platform exploring the way that technology is impacting the way people eat through a weekly blog and newsletter. So 1.5 billion euros over the last year has gone into quick commerce players that sell 1,500 to 4,000 items of fresh and convenience products in 15 minutes or less throughout Europe. And now they're all entering the US. We got Getir, Fancy, Wheezy, Gorillas, Deja, Flink, Kaju, Joker, and the list just goes on and on and on. I'm very excited to have this very diverse panel of insiders that will help us look at each side of this very innovative model. So to kick it off, we got Emma Beckett. Oh, sorry, Beckett, editor of Restaurant Dive. We got David Lin, co-founder of Duffle, and we got Mark Ziad, who's the director of enterprise and business development at Zumo. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Emma, do you want to just kick it off and give us a quick intro on you, and then we'll just go around the room?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma. I'm the editor of Restaurant Dive. We're a digital business-to-business publication focusing on the restaurant space, which is a very exciting segment to cover because there's so much space, there's so much changes happening in this space because of the pandemic. We're covering a lot of changes in the technology space, centering specifically on delivery, ghost kitchens, and other supply chain issues there. We're also looking at policy and have been covering how the SBA and the Restaurant Revitalization Fund have been working to support these restaurants that have been having a hard time during the pandemic. But we cover pretty much everything that's related to the restaurant business with a specific focus on the technology and digital side.
Awesome, thank you. And David, Duffle, give us a quick little background on Duffle.
Yeah, we'd love to. So yeah, my name is David. I'm a co-founder of Duffle, and we deliver groceries to college students in 10 minutes. We've been going very quickly since we launched in April of the pandemic. Now we're at 3 schools, UCLA, USC, UCSB, and we're getting ready to scale to 30 more by the end of next year. And yeah, that's what we do.
Awesome. And last but not least, Mark, we'd love to hear more about Zumo.
Definitely. Hi, guys. My name is Mark. I'm leading the enterprise business for Zumo in North America. Zumo basically provides light electric vehicle solutions to last mile delivery providers. So we have 2 main models. One is a B2C model where we work directly with the food delivery couriers, who typically are independent contractors, provide them with electric bikes and electric mopeds. They can purchase it, they can basically subscribe and just pay a monthly or weekly fee. And obviously along with that, we provide them with the servicing and the software solutions. And the other model, which is the one I'm currently leading in the US, is the B2B model, where we actually work with the companies. And a lot of them are actually the ultra-fast delivery companies that emerged in the past year, and we offer them the same solutions, but more of a long-term contracts, SLA agreements, and basically trying to be the trusted partner to all these players. Super excited to be here with you guys and looking forward to the conversation.
Very cool, thank you. Oh yeah, I'd love to kick it up with Mark. I'm very curious. You have partnerships with everyone from Just Eat Takeaway to Getir, Gorillas, and DoorDash, even Domino's Pizza I was seeing on your website. Can we just dig in a little bit more into the B2B side and understand how these deals work? The companies who are able to pay for this, as opposed to having their contractors, having it come out of their earnings, and kind of the mechanics of how that all works, and also kind of get into the different use cases of the trailers versus the trikes and the normal bikes and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, Matt, a lot of companies initially, when delivery started, were going, we're following basically the contractor route, where they basically hire contractors, these guys are responsible of getting their own vehicles, which is typically like electric bikes or even cars in some cases. And then, they're responsible of everything related to the fleet. And I think the shift we've seen over the past years is that a lot of the companies are now hiring employees. And because, they basically now have employees, they have to worry about, providing them with the vehicles for them to be able to do their jobs. And this is where like the whole conversation about, fleet started with a lot of these companies. And the model we follow is basically, just before we actually, discuss with any potential client or partner the type of vehicle or like the specs of our products, we follow a holistic approach in the sense of, we're here to basically take, out of your plate anything related to fleet and just provide you basically with peace of mind when it comes to fleet management, from like selecting the right product down to actually doing the servicing, and even down to like, having some fleet management software so that you can track your data and have a clear reporting basically process. And so right now, a lot of these guys are interested in electric bikes, and that's really the main product that we design in-house and manufacture. The difference, between us and other bike manufacturers is that we designed our bike based on, 3-4 years of basically learning what the delivery use case is about, starting from food delivery to cargo delivery to grocery deliveries, recently, and designing a bike that is, well suited for that use case. And so things, that these companies look for are, durable bikes, comfort for their employees, bikes that can handle, cargo load in some cases. Obviously, speed is important, and then low maintenance. And so we focus a lot on showing those aspects of our bikes along basically throughout those partnerships and while working with those clients. The other thing that we provide, and that's super important for delivery providers, is servicing. So, it's one thing to actually get the bike or buy the bike. It's another thing to actually maintain a percentage fleet uptime, right? And so you don't want to end up in a situation where like 50% of the fleet you have is down, and you basically have a lot of orders that you have to fulfill, but you just don't have enough vehicles to do it. And so we agree with them on specific servicing packages with the overall objective of maintaining a minimum uptime percentage, whether through like actual percentage of total fleet, or through agreeing on a turnaround time in terms of like how long it would take us to fix a bike when it's down. And that also like drills down to the actual use case in terms of like understanding how they're actually using the bike. Because like, going back to your initial point, if you're pulling a trailer and pulling cargo, it's completely different than, doing a 10-minute trip to deliver like one package. So the type of usage and the frequency of usage differs a lot and impacts the servicing, agreements that we have with those clients. The third thing we provide is what we call financing, or like basically making the bike affordable, or like the vehicle affordable. And that's also very, very important because, today, if you want to buy a good electric bike that is well suited for delivery, and, keep in mind, these guys are going to be using the bikes like at least 8 hours a day, maybe 6 days a week, you're probably going to have to pay like at least $2,000 actually dollars per bike, right? And so what we offer for these guys is some form of like lease agreement where they actually can pay a monthly fee over, a number of months. And that allows them to spread out the cost and not have to commit upfront to like a big cash payment. And that actually makes like the case for all of them, way easier, especially if they're starting up in a new city or a new country. And then the last thing, we also add is the software solution, which is basically, a lot of those companies so far, at least, and that's what we noticed, just rely on like Google Sheets and Excel to like track issues, with the bikes, track basically, servicing issues, track even like, assigning riders or mechanics to the bikes and things like that. And that's like super, non-efficient. It creates a lot of confusion, and it actually, in some cases, become, blockers for them doing their jobs. And so we've designed an in-house like fleet management software solution that initially was supposed to be used for us internally to manage our own B2C side of the business. And we started like providing that same software solution to those clients, and basically in some cases customizing it a little bit for their use case. And we saw that helps them a lot in terms of like understanding, the data behind how they're managing their fleet and reacting to that, to this data. One last thing to add here is that, just going back to your initial point about trailers and trikes, we started initially with the food delivery use case. And to be honest, we also started like heavily focused on B2C, basically, striking partnership with Uber Eats and DoorDash and the likes of these companies in Europe and Australia. And then as we started kind of identifying the B2B needs, we moved to focusing more and more on B2B. And in that sector, we've identified like, 2 or 3 main categories, I would say. One is, the ultra fast grocery delivery, which is booming right now. And that really, boils down to having a good, electric vehicle solution, light electric vehicle solution. It could be a scooter, it could be an electric bike. But the idea here that needs to be something that can be easily, the rider can easily use it and just like, every single second that, they can save in terms of like assigning a bike to a rider and having them, getting trained or riding it and doing delivery is basically what they look for. So, ease of use, being fast and obviously being low maintenance is super important. The other use case is more like, the Amazon/Whole Foods use case, which is, delivering packages, through Amazon Prime or delivering groceries through Whole Foods, which is more like bulk deliveries. And most of these guys, they work with delivery partners and their delivery partners in urban dense areas, they use electric bikes and trailers. So it's literally like attaching a trailer that can pull like, 400 pounds and using that across the city to do deliveries. And here the use case is obviously very different because speed is not important anymore. Like these guys actually cap the speed of their bikes, to 12 miles per hour. But torque is super important because they need to be able to pull, those cargo packages. And so the difference changes a little bit. And obviously, it becomes more about maintenance and more about like torque and being able to pull. And then the last one, which is like right now getting a lot of traction in the US, is this conversation around trikes. Historically, trikes has, especially in New York, they have been limited to like 36, inches in terms of width, which basically make it harder to, add a lot of load on the trike, because, people are afraid that it could flip. And I think there's a lot of lobbying right now happening to increase that width from like 36 to 55, which will actually means that you can actually use a trike to potentially even replace a van to do deliveries. And that would enable a lot of, adoption from that perspective, not just from like, the likes of Amazon and Whole Foods, but even like, companies like DHL and UPS and these guys. And we are actually getting our first like prototype for a trike in New York by end of July. And we're planning on doing a couple of pilots with some of these companies. But a lot of it like right now is still sitting with like the regulation and the types of bills that could pass, that could, basically improve the specs of these products. So let me stop here and, happy
Thank
to.
you. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and I know UPS is actually said that they're going to be getting into same day delivery. So I'm very interested to see what that looks like, and I think the service model is very interesting. David, you guys have really really adopted heavily the e scooter model and have kind of purchased them on behalf of your contractors, or many of them are college students at the universities where you operate. Can you talk a little bit about why that gives you an advantage for speed for your 10-minute delivery time target, and also talk maybe a little bit more about why college campuses lend themselves best to this model?
Yeah, I would love to. First of all, that's really amazing insight, Mark. Where do I sign up? These sound like great products. Yeah, so
talk after.
yeah, we should talk. Basically, scooters was the kind of light bulb moment for me when I started in 2018. I was like surrounded by Bird at UCLA. We were the first campuses they launched. And that kind of instigated the idea in my head of delivering with scooters. And then slowly we pivoted to the model of owning inventory, which then presumably became quick commerce, right? And everyone and their mom is doing it now. And it's definitely been booming in the pandemic 2020. So that's the reason why we've always used scooters from the beginning. They're super light, easy to manipulate, pretty quick. Our scooters go 19 miles an hour, have a 40-mile range, and they're really cheap, more importantly. And you can store a bunch of them in a very small location. So when we started, we were running the store from my apartment. We had like 12 scooters in the apartment, no problem. You can't really fit that many bikes, and definitely not that many cars. So that's the advantage of the scooters. Yeah, we're currently running into that problem of we actually classify everyone as an employee part-time. So we have to provide them with the equipment for them to do their jobs. It's part of the law. So we're really looking to partner with companies that kind of outsource that service management layer of the problem. And I think that would be a huge opportunity for sure down the line. And colleges, I mean, there's a few reasons why I think colleges are really good. If you look at the kind of the macro lens of what's going on, there's a lot of these companies in Europe and Asia, and the characteristics they share is population density, right? The more heads per square mile you have, the more profitable a dark store can be. And the only places that really resemble that kind of geography in America are college campuses, where there's so many people living in a dense urban area. And more than that, there's a lot of viral growth. So CAC is greatly reduced when you have people, in their early 20s talking to each other, living together all the time, and they always share everything with their friends. So virality is a huge component, really reduces the CAC. And kind of the culture we've built at Duffle is one where we eliminated the double-sided marketplace, or the double-sided CAC. We don't really have to acquire drivers because getting a job at Duffle is really selective, really clout. We've had maybe 50 racers and over 600 applications to be a racer. So it's like it's a really sought after job. It's well paying. You're working with your friends. You're riding scooters. It's really fun. And yeah, so that's another reason. Kind of the supply side thing at colleges is a lot easier. And I say the last thing is like, these are the first years that a consumer is developing their grocery habits. These are the first years that they're going to the store themselves, budgeting, and then forming these strong associations with brands, the CPGs. So that's why it's really powerful to kind of affiliate yourself at that age range, and kind of gain that prime mental real estate for them to always associate, Duffle and all our products to kind of convenience.
That's super fascinating. Do you how are you seeing college students use Duffle? What is the job to be done for Duffle? Is it are they using it instead of a weekly stock up? Are they just adopting Duffle as if it's like a pantry that they can just pull from on demand? Or are they still doing their weekly grocery shopping, and then just adding on with Duffle kind of as a supplementary thing?
Yeah, so I definitely say still the majority of people will do their weekly restocks. But I think that's exactly the problem that we're trying to solve for. It's not efficient on a societal scale for each person in each apartment to take an individual trip to the store every week, right? That forces people to make a prediction about what they're going to consume over the course of the week. And that inevitably leads to food waste. Like a third of all food is thrown away. You have to create a system where a consumer doesn't have to guess what they're going to eat. They can buy it in that moment. And then, that avoids so much inefficiency. Like, I don't know what I'm going to want for dinner, let alone, next Tuesday. But people are forced to make this guess because of grocery store paradigm. But I think there's like different segments of the customers. Our best customers, I can tell you, order from us every single day, multiple times a day. And they've kind of adopted that lifestyle of anything you need, just Duffle it. And it's kind of become the grocery store replacement. Like for me, I haven't gone to the grocery store in months. And I get all my food from our store.
And you're doing about 500 SKUs the last time I checked, or has it grown since then?
Yeah, so one of our schools, our UCLA school, has a really, really tiny store. It was our first store. So that store has like 500 SKUs. And then our Santa Barbara store is like 4 or 5 times bigger. So we have about 2 to 2.5 thousand SKUs. I think that's like the sweet spot, between 2 to 4,000 SKUs. And ideally you have a supply chain system and product pipeline that really understands and learns from the demographics and uses data in making his purchase decisions so that you don't have an abundance of products, but only the best products. So kind of the
Totally.
80-20 principle.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, think about the 30,000 SKUs that are in your typical grocer, 40,000 SKUs, what percentage of each of, what are the top SKUs in inside of each of those stores, and is it really necessary to have that full selection to achieve the same result? And what is the cost kind of benefit trade-off between having more SKUs and paying more for that overhead? It's something that I think the grocery industry is going to really have to reckon with. But what I want to shift over real quick to with Emma, because she's kind of our resident restaurant expert, is kind of the threat that we're starting to see from players like GoPuff, who are getting into fresh prepared food from these dark stores. So, Gorillas and some of these other players, Fridge No More, et cetera, have, and even Duffle, I think, has locally curated products from, restaurants or other local kinds of fixtures in a community. But that's only gets you to, like, a sauce or, some sort of item that has a longer shelf life. Now GoPuff is actually getting into making full-on personal pizzas and breakfast sandwiches. How are we going to see restaurants tap into this channel, and just how much of a threat is it to a lot of the marketplaces of food delivery 2.0, shall we say?
That's a great question. So over the past few years, we've seen really a convergence of the grocery retail space and the restaurant space. A lot of crossover with restaurants and grocery stores, and just a blurring of the line between grocery retail and restaurants. And so I think we're seeing that continue with what your point about GoPuff getting into offering restaurant menu items of their own, not just getting into fresh grocery. And so I think there's opportunity for integration here for restaurants, because it could be beneficial for restaurants to partner with these quick commerce companies, because they get in front of a new consumer base who is very digitally savvy, often in urban markets, often skew younger, have money to spend. And so that's a good opportunity for restaurants to raise their brand awareness, and also a good opportunity for these quick commerce companies to diversify their offerings and make it more enticing for consumers to get on their platform and stay loyal to it. I think that could bring an element of excitement there, that you can not only get household goods and fresh groceries in some instances, but eventually restaurant style meals as well. I think is a really compelling offering. And I think that through partnerships with restaurants, that could be possible for more of these quick commerce companies, because even though these quick commerce firms typically operate with micro fulfillment centers and they have these dark warehouses in urban centers, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the infrastructure to build out the kitchen of their own in those spaces. And so that's where I see partnerships being an opportunity as the space matures.
Any thoughts as to, and I think like the term grocerant is something that I really like to say lately. And I think that that's kind of what this is starting to resemble for me, as these kind of calorie swim lanes kind of break down between grocery and restaurants, as you spoke about. But any thought as to how quick commerce benefits from the recent fee caps that we've seen proposed in New York City and SF, and kind of how big of a deal is that for companies like DoorDash, which even operates their own dark stores as well, and Uber Eats, et cetera? Like, any thought as to how much of a boom that is for quick commerce?
Yeah, that's a great question, because these businesses are very different structurally from the restaurant delivery companies that you mentioned. So those restaurant delivery aggregators are relying on their partnerships with restaurants and charging very steep commission fees, sometimes 20 to 30%. And like you said, many municipalities across the country are now cracking down on that, and they're capping fees at 5%, 10% to try and protect restaurant bottom lines. And a lot of that was born out of the pandemic. But many cities are considering making those fees permanent. And that could be an issue for those delivery aggregators, because that's a big part of their economic model. And that could be something that hurts them. And with these quick commerce companies, you know, as you all know, they're vertically integrated. They have their marketplaces in-house. They're not having to partner with someone else. And they also have the benefit of, at least right now, many of them aren't charging delivery fees to the consumer. They often don't have minimums. So they're very attractive to the consumer because of that. There's a low barrier to entry. And so I could see that being really a competitive element and something that could potentially poach consumers from those delivery aggregator platforms to quick commerce and even ultra fast delivery platforms because of those lack of fees if they get into the restaurant space.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, you deal with some of these guys like Just Eat and DoorDash. How are they specifically? I don't know what you can say, but are they making their drivers pay for this, or are they giving it to them as a perk? And how does that factor into their earnings?
Yeah. So they're not giving it to them as a perk, but they are becoming more and more interested in providing discounts and subsidizing a lot of it. So you know, I can speak to some of the partnerships we have with Uber Eats and DoorDash. It's a lot about like providing, first of all, like discounted pricing compared to like, you know, them coming straight to us and renting the bike versus like going through the Uber Eats Zumo partnership and getting a discount. They also provide them with like an initial incentive to sign up. So there is a bigger objective here, which is like to try to move as many delivery couriers as possible from, you know, whatever they're using today to using, you know, cleaner solutions such as electric bikes or electric scooters, or even, you know, in some cases, electric cars. And so there's also this additional incentive, which is like, if you switch over, you get like 1 week for free or 2 weeks for free, depending on the partnership we have with them. And so they're definitely, you know, becoming more flexible and more interested in doing that. I'm not sure if eventually, you know, they would, you know, offer it for free or like they would basically subsidize it fully. I know there have been some discussion about that and, you know, some brainstorming going on, but I don't think they are, you know, at this stage yet.
Got it. Everyone in the audience, if you have any questions from anything you've heard so far, please put it into the chat. We will get to it within the next few moments here. David, I kind of want to circle back to you to talk a little bit more about Duffle. To my knowledge, is one of the only players in the U.S., maybe the only player that is in quick commerce that is doing a franchise model. You have this Admiral program you've scaled. You know, from what I remember, you started at UCLA operating the dark stores yourselves, but now you've gone and found students at other college campuses who are taking on the business for you. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, why that is unique and kind of maybe a little bit more about the economics of that and why that's beneficial as compared to a lot of these other players that are, you know, fronting all the that are operating all these dark stores themselves?
Yeah, so the first thing to say is the franchise idea is kind of the namesake of the word Duffle. It was when we were contemplating a pivot and we looked on YouTube and found a bunch of like high school students selling candy out of duffel bags. And we looked around our apartment and we were like, wow, we were running this like 6-figure business from like a 4th floor apartment. Like anybody should be able to do this, right? And that was kind of the dream and the idea. And that kind of led us down the path of running our own dark store and then creating the technology that enables other people to run it, especially other college entrepreneurs. So I think the reason why it's better is mostly like it's cultural reasons and the efficiency of growth. So I think culture is really underestimated in this business. Food is kind of inherently a very intimate thing, and people will tend towards these tribalistic tendencies, like especially in colleges. You know, Greek life is a big thing, and social groups are a big thing. But yeah, people are ultimately tribalistic, and they'll always want to support their friends. So what we've discovered is when you have people on the ground who are part of the community, they're able to execute the growth initiatives and maintain a well-functioning team better than if you were quote unquote an outsider, or a large, or perceived as a large chain. So what we do is we have a thorough interview and selection process for our Admiral candidates. And it's kind of a network effect in that way. The more customers we get, the more Admiral candidates we get, because our customers are telling their friends at other schools to open their own dark store. And it's a really compelling proposition for a student, right? To run a 7-figure business, earn a 6-figure salary, while you're pursuing a degree. And the challenge has been to build the infrastructure that allows us to really simplify this operationally heavy business. So yeah, we've scaled to 2 schools with this model and are refining our playbook and tech to do a lot more. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
And then do you guys fund the CapEx of these? Or I guess there's not that much CapEx required, but like, are you guys owning, like what is owned by Duffle and what is ultimately the responsibility of the operator?
Yeah, great question. So we're very inspired by Chick-fil-A's franchise model. So it's not a strict franchise in the sense that you can't own like multiple dark stores, right? And you're not kind of a hands-off owner of a restaurant, but instead you're really hands-on and deeply involved operationally with the store. And the way they've kind of created that incentive structure is, number one, by making it extremely selective, and number two, making it extremely low barrier to entry. So, a McDonald's might cost $1 million to start for the franchisee. It costs $0 to start a Duffle store for a franchisee. We're teaching these college entrepreneurs how to run a business. We're giving them these playbooks, a core team that supports them in their endeavors, and we take all the CapEx. So real estate, equipment, insurance, etc. And yeah, so I think it's really about building kind of a pedagogical system to educate these young entrepreneurs on top of just what Duffle is. But yeah, it doesn't really cost them anything to start. And it's like a school outside of school.
I feel like I should re-enroll into college to become a franchisee. Emma, you study this space every day as far as the franchise world when it comes to restaurants. Any light bulbs go off when you heard about this Chick-fil-A kind of influence here with Duffle? And could you see, Getir is actually doing this in Turkey and has built, kind of its network doing this franchise route. Could you see this happening with a non-college player in the US and use some of the restaurant kind of folks that have done this to kind of kickstart that? Or is that kind of something that you don't think they would even consider?
I think it's possible. I don't have a crystal ball, but there's a lot of confidence in the restaurant space right now and adjacent spaces, which is good to see after the pandemic, because there was certainly a dip in confidence there for a bit, but people are hungry for new digitally integrated opportunities. We've seen that with a spike in interest in ghost kitchen opportunities and being able to franchise that way or operate as a host kitchen for an existing franchisor and offer a different brand operating out of your own kitchen. So I think that we're seeing a runway for interest in that kind of innovative, digitally integrated restaurant business and adjacent restaurant businesses. So I would say so. I could see this taking off.
Very cool. We just before we go into Q&A, I want to go back to David real quick. And I don't know if you saw that about GoPuff getting into fresh food, but any thoughts on Duffle's potential to be a channel for this kind of fresh prepared food, or is it something that's a really difficult logistically?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for days about this. I think the winner of this space will not be just the best dark store. It will have to be the most sustainable store. Given enough time, people always realize that we have to go back to the natural ways of our ancestors, right? Like everybody wants to eat healthy. The only reason we don't is because it's inconvenient to eat healthy, or that it's not as good as the unhealthy options. And that's the paradigm we have to change. So I love that they're doing that. We're also doing that in our own little way. Like we have these fruit cups that we source directly from the local fruit truck. He brings them in every morning, hand picks them. It's the best fruit, according to our customers, that they've ever had, because it's so fresh and it's all sold out by the end of the day. So kind of that our store is serving as kind of a fruit stand, and in January we sold like 24 cups. By May we were selling like 1,400 cups or something. And it's the fastest growing vertical. So it's very clear to me that human beings want to eat healthy food and fresh food. It's just a matter of how can you execute on that, and that is certainly the direction we're going. And any other smart player will also go in that direction. Of course, it's more complex. You have to deal with expiration, you have to deal with storage, temperature, sanitation. But I think it's just a matter of like creating the systems to support that.
Very cool. I love the fruit cart kind of analogy, and yeah, I'm definitely a fan of the blending of these channels. We have, just to dovetail that from the audience, we have DeLoss asking about how important is temperature control, and if I interpret the first part of his question is how many items is normal to hold in rapid delivery. I think maybe we just talk about on a typical order how many things you're putting into a bag, and I guess how that factors into batching. But we can talk about kind of that last mile of temperature and batching. I guess, David.
Yeah, so I think for us, we have the 3 standard temperatures, like dry, fridge, freezer. Ideally, we get to the level of sophistication where maybe at the warehouse level, where we are storing each type of food at their optimal temperatures, right? Because the idea is the grocery store is optimized for human beings, at room temperature for human beings to be comfortable. But this is not the temperature that these produce and vegetables thrive. Like something like if you put potatoes in a colder temperature, they last like a week or 2 weeks longer. And that is the case for a lot of different goods. So ideally, all of this is kind of, I think a company that does this really well is Direct Fresh in New York. I saw a video about their warehousing system, and it's like everything is stored in a particular temperature that optimizes for shelf life and freshness. But yeah, what was the second part of the question?
I think he was asking about how many items is it normal to hold, but you already answered that. But maybe you talk about batching.
Yeah, I think like, I don't know, the industry average might be 2,000 to 3,000 per dark store. Some are more, some are less. And on an order level, the question is, when you eat or snack at any particular moment, how many unique SKUs are you eating? Right, it's not that many. So our orders kind of reflect that. It's maybe like 2 to 5 SKUs in that range. And I think that's actually representative of the hypothesis that you don't have to guess, you just buy exactly what you need when you need it. And then if you need something again, you just order again. So average order volume is not the metric you want to go for. It's actually order frequency.
Assuming you're not fronting the bill on the delivery.
Yeah, right.
I think Joker would have a very different answer to that question. Sergey is asking, do you see, maybe Mark could also maybe answer this, but anyone feel free to jump in here. Do dark stores and micro fulfillment provide that necessary grid for 10-minute on-demand delivery, or is there still a need for smaller nano fulfillment stations around neighborhoods? So is there some sort of hub and spoke model that might emerge here, or is it going to be mostly kind of uniform?
I can try to answer it. I don't think I'm the best person to answer that question, but I think the initial premise is, finding or basically setting up micro fulfillment centers that could cover the 10-minute radius around that center, which typically translates, I think, to like 3 miles maybe, or maybe a bit more, a bit less, depending on the city. And I think, you know, eventually, like maybe like taking the question to another level, there is a big discussion in that space around whether it's more important to be faster, or is it more important to have a wider range of products, right? And that really impacts, you know, the direction, or like actually the answer to that question. I think there is a general initial consensus of like, you know, it doesn't matter if it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes, maybe even doesn't matter if it's 20 minutes, as long as we have all the products that the customers in that neighborhood, you know, would wanna get, or at least that's my understanding from talking to different clients we have. And so from that perspective, if that's really where it's going, I feel like the micro fulfillment centers are probably good enough. And, you know, there might not be a real need for like smaller or like nano fulfillment centers, or even like automated stations. It's still too early, I think, to judge or to like make a call on this. I think if it ends up being no, actually, you know, being fast is actually more important, then yes, you probably, you know, can narrow it down to even like 5 minutes or like 2-3 minutes. And if that's the case, then you probably would have to go from like micro to nano. So just based on my understanding so far, based on what I see and the discussions I have, it seems like it's going more in the direction of wider range, you know, better customization to consumer preferences, which might compromise, you know, the 10-minute makes it, you know, 20-minute maybe, and that's fine as long as, you know, the customer can find, you know, everything they're looking for.
David, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely interesting. Like each player is going to have a different emphasis on those 3 core value props, right? Of price, speed, selection. Like those are like 100% always going to be the most important things in this business. And like people are going to prioritize differently. For us, according to kind of our customer surveys, price is the most important thing. Then it's speed, and last is selection. So I think like our whole idea is around the core thesis of proximity, right? That proximity is what drives speed and more subtly efficiency. And that efficiency is what allows you to have a lower cost structure, which allows you to offer better prices, even with free delivery, right? So you were saying how like, if you don't have the front delivery cost, then maybe if order frequency is better. I'd argue that with enough labor efficiency, frequency is better no matter who fronts the delivery costs, just because it's so efficient. It's more efficient than people going to the grocery store themselves for the business. So right now, or actually probably shouldn't disclose that, but our theoretical limit for how many orders we can deliver per hour is, I think, closer to 25 to 30 per driver. And at that level of efficiency, it's negligible kind of each order's cost per delivery. And that is only possible with a workforce that is really intimately familiar with the not 3 mile radius, the half a mile radius around our stores, and knows every alleyway door code and, you know, customers by heart. And that's kind of what you're going for. So, and then that, you know, with that, you can offer the lowest prices with free delivery at 5 to 10 minutes deliveries. Because that speed is really the game changer in terms of, because look, we have 500 SKUs at UCLA, and you can order 7 now, you can order DoorDash, right? You can get anything at all, just slower, but people aren't doing that. It's like, because, you know, the natural human tendency is to just want instant gratification. And that really changes kind of the way you can conduct life if you can get something instantly. We like to say you can boil water and then buy your pasta. Right? And it's like, you can't do that if you have to wait 20, 30 minutes.
That orders per hour, or like driver orders per hour set, is just absolutely insane. I think that you guys are definitely in the top range there. So congrats on that. I think we're running out of time, but you know, this has been a really amazing conversation. Get some really cool angles here that I hadn't thought about before. So thank you all for joining me up here, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We had a really great turnout. Make sure you're signed up for more updates from Curbivore, curbivore.co. And if you're at all interested in deep analysis on the space, I cover these trends weekly at hungry.tv. Emma does as well at Restaurant Dive. So be sure to check us out. And until next time, we will catch you on the next coffee break or lunch break. So talk to you all soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.